Can you hear me, Earl? Earl, can you hear me? Can you hear me? I can't hear you. Can you hear me, Earl?
Hey, what's happening?
Brother, what's up?
This is a groovy party, man.
Yeah,
I
brother,
can dig it.
stop. Right on.
Hey, man, what's your name? Mother, there's too many of you crying. Brother.
Good morning and welcome to the Earl Ingram Show. As always, you can join us at 855-752-4842. That's 855-752-4842. You can text us at that same number. Good morning to you, Carti. How you doing, man?
Man, I'm feeling good, Earl, man. It is a blessed weekend ahead. Well, ahead of me. I got a lot of stuff going on this weekend ahead. I'm looking in the forecast. And yeah, it's Tuesday. It's Tuesday.
And you're already looking at the weekend?
I'm already forecasting the weekend.
Sandy, you know, man.
These people don't just live for the weekend. Apparently, they only live in the weekends.
It's Tuesday, man. You know, I haven't forecast. I mean, I got a lot of stuff going on, but I got to take it, Sandy, one day at a time.
Yeah.
Is that what happens when we?
Maybe Gen Z just doesn't live during the weekend, during the week, just on weekends. I was just reading an article about how there's a school course that's being taught on teaching Gen Z people how to use the telephone. apparently most Gen Zers have a phone phobia, other than texting on the phone. In fact, they don't know what the phone is for in terms of talking into it. It's just for texting.
You know, uh, look, if you don't know by now, that's my co-host Sandy Williams. Hey, Sandy, good morning to you. Let's start with the pleasantries.
Well, we should just text to one another on the Let's just. It doesn't work so well on the radio, but what the hell? That's what everyone's doing.
You know, we're just in a place, that I'm trying to understand. Generation Z, now, I've got some old cassette tapes, right? That I've had for a long time, and they're in the basement.
Yeah, they're antiques, Earl.
What's the point of it even? Well, people still held on to those 8-tracks, and it turned out the 8-tracks wound up being worth some money.
Just because they were rare. And novelties, I think they're, I'm 8-tracks, holy cow. And it's, Henry Mancini music, usually, elevator music.
Well, let me ask you, because if you go back, Sandy, I'm sure you had reel-to-reels. Did you hang on to your reel-to-reels?
No, but we did. Growing up, my father he was into novel technology. He was a techie back before there were techies, and we had reel-to-reel recorders. Yep.
Well, people held on to them. They wound up being worth some money.
Yeah. Well, and in fact, computers used to run on reel-to-reel computers and reel-to-reel tape for a long time.
Hey, come on, Sandy.
Yeah, the early computers had reel-to-reel. In other words, instead of a cassette disc, you had a tape reel. That was the memory.
Even I don't remember that one, Sandy.
Well,
that's way above our pay.
Yeah.
But I'll also say, Sandy, if just thinking back on those things, did you keep your what do you call those things? Not the
shoes,
records, but no, not records, but the big ones, the big.
Oh, the 78 RPM.
No, not the 78 RPM was a little bit before my time.
Yeah,
but they had the little 45 records, and then they had the other ones that were
vinyl disc.
Is that they didn't call them
right?
No, they didn't call them.
Yeah, vinyl. Yeah, now they call them.
Yeah, but
they call them vinyl. Back they were 33 RPM.
Yeah, but they were big. Well, I'm talking about what do you call them, man? I used to buy these. You go in the store and you buy these albums. I guess albums they were called.
Yeah, they were called albums. Or sometimes some people unconventionally would just call them records.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I know people who kept all that stuff. Man, I got rid of this. If you kept all that stuff, Sandy, I mean, you'd almost be considered a hoarder, right?
Well, except that they do get valuable. Baseball cards, those things that kids kept, apparently they got valuable. So
Sandy,
I just chewed the gum. I would go to the drugstore with my buddies. They would keep the cards, and I would chew that awful, crisp, paper-like gum. Yeah, the bubble gum.
It was horrible.
Well, that's what I did.
Yeah. Well, but I mean, people who kept these albums, and and the album came back to be worth something. But, I guess, I wasn't either smart enough, or I just could not see holding on to a bunch of albums.
Well, I embrace
50 years.
I currently embrace the idea that things are much more valuable when they get older.
Does that include you and I?
Yeah, that was my point. Yeah. Vintage. We are vintage people, and it's kind of a good thing. Well, some people collect them.
Well, maybe they should be asking our wives if we are more valuable as we.
Yeah.
Well.
So we can't call you guys old timers. You guys are vintage.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess we are that. But anyway, got a lot to talk about. Sandy, 52 degrees yesterday.
I know it's my ice rink is deciding to transform. It's transformative for ice. This heat.
Well, but Sandy, it certainly had its, you know,
It had a good
you
run.
used it right.
Yeah, it had a good run, but
I mean,
but we're this. I don't know whether this turns directly into spring, but every day that's warm like this is a day that isn't winter. So
you know, it was 52 degrees. All that snow melted. I mean, it's amazing how quickly it went.
yeah,
But I guess 52 degrees does something harrowing to snow and ice, right?
yeah. Snow and ice live in fear of 52 degrees. But and also the snow was very powdery. It wasn't very dense snow, so there wasn't as much moisture in it. And yeah, it's gone. Looking out, it's
Yeah. Well,
back to brown.
well, well, and maybe this snow that we got, what, week before last, maybe that snow was good because we do know that snow melts, it turns into water, and it eventually does something for the earth, right? And grass.
Yeah, you're no fool. You got that right.
Anyway, listen, a lot to talk about today, Sandy. And there's always a lot to talk about. I want to begin, Sandy, though, with
Actually, I would accuse us today of living within that Chinese curse. May you live in interesting times. I think it's a little too interesting right now. Actually, I think the times are surprisingly interesting at a level that's disturbing.
The Trump policies caught up with UW-Madison and Milwaukee Public Schools the other day. UW-Madison had been offering courses to bring in teachers and educate them for special ed, since there's so many, such a lack of special ed teachers in Milwaukee Public Schools. And so there was something that was going on where there were money set aside to train teachers in order to, at UW-Madison, in order to make sure that they would be able to come into Milwaukee Public Schools and fill major voids to address, many of the children who are special ed students. And so Trump's policies shut all that off. And they shut all of that off because they said, well, there was DEI training going on there. Sandy, we're living in strange times.
Well, it isn't strange. I mean, it's cruel. The notion that, if voucher schools don't have to take all these special ed students, and so the public school system ends up being the one that has to deal with, and these people, the special ed students do require special education. They can be difficult to have in a regular classroom. They can make it harder to teach all the rest of the students. And so it's important that there be trained people to properly provide the opportunities to these special ed students. And if you have a policy that is essentially trying to turn your back on public schools, trying to fund vouchers, you can also stick your head in the sand about special ed students and ignore them. And it's not just cruel, but it's counterproductive. It makes it very hard to teach the rest of the students.
Sandy, the fact that the reason and the rationale that they gave was they're doing DEI. I mean, Well,
apparently DEI might include dealing with and providing for special ed students. I mean, DEI seems to be a term that is used quite broadly, and it's not clearly well defined. What is DEI education? It could mean a lot of things to a lot of different people, and apparently it doesn't seem to supporting special ed students.
Sandy, you certainly said it right. Cruel, just cruel and inhumane to cut that off, and we're going to talk a little bit later on, and I guess actually. When we come back, I want to talk about nearly 40% of contracts canceled by Doge are expected to produce no savings. You said that.
Yeah, I mean, when they rolled up their sleeves and looked for actual savings, much of what they're cutting is theoretical money that wasn't maybe going to be spent anyway, or is money that was miscalculated, and the savings have been severely, extremely overestimated. And so, yeah, and this is all for the purpose of trying to cut taxes. And after we come back, I did some research on the level of taxation in this country over the past 75 years,
All
and
right.
it's lower today.
855-752-4842. It's Tuesday. That means Tuesdays with my co-host Sandy Williams and you on the Earl Ingram Show.
Picket lines and picket signs. Don't punish me with brutality. Talk to me so you can see what's going on. What's going on? Yeah, what's going on? Oh, what's going on? Right now. Swim the sea, you can jump into the fire, but you never be free. You can shake me up, or I can bring you down.
All right, welcome back to the Earl Ingram Show. As always, you can join us at 855-752-4842. That's 855-752-4842. Text us at that same number. It's Tuesday. That means Tuesdays with my co-host Sandy Williams. Sandy, your music.
Well, it's kind of about craziness. The music that evokes or is evocative of sort of a sense of craziness. That's Harry Nilsson, Jump Into the Fire, which is one of my favorite pieces, actually. But it seemed apropos of our time today, because I wake up each day and something about what's going on just feels bizarre. It doesn't feel real. One of the things that I mentioned before the break that I just wanted to mention, having done the research, is that much of what's going on, the Doge and the rest of it, seems to be to justify a tax break under the assertion that government is big and wasteful and that we're being overtaxed. Well, the history of our taxation level is contrary to that proposition. For the last 75 years, the U.S. taxes collected by income taxes has been quite stable and has been in the 8% of GDP range for 75 years. We were taxed at a higher percentage of GDP in the 50s and 60s. And for the last 20 years, we've been taxed at a rate currently our rate is about 7.7% of GDP, which is lower than the 75-year trend. So currently income taxes as a percentage of GDP, which is the drag on the economy that it might be, is at its lowest level over the past 75 years. So all of this talk about the need to chop at government and put a meat axe at it to get this tax burden off of our backs defies the reality.
Well, Sandy, the GOP, many GOP senators right now and Congress people are calling for even deeper cuts in the budget. And I'm looking here, nearly 40% of federal contracts that the Trump administration claims to have canceled as part of its signature cost-cutting program aren't expected to save the government any money. The administration's own data shows the Department of Government Efficiency, run by Elon Musk, last week published an initial list of 1,125 contracts that it terminated in recent weeks across the federal government. Data published on Doge's wall of receipts shows that more than 1/3 of the contract cancellations, 417 in all, are expected to yield no savings. That's usually because the total value of the contract has already been fully obligated, which means the government has a legal requirement to spend the funds for the goods or services it purchased, and in many cases has already done so, Sandy.
Well, NPR did a deep dive with their staff into the alleged savings that Doge was claiming last week, and Doge was claiming something like 85 billion, and when they rolled up their sleeves, it looked to be nothing in excess of 1 to 2 billion as possible savings. And so, this is a lot of hype, and it's hype designed to support a tax reduction. They're even grifting us into suggesting that maybe they'll send each of us a big check out of these savings, which incidentally, even with the savings, if they were to occur, would still leave our annual budget with a very substantial deficit, over $1 trillion deficit. So, I mean, this is grifting. This is all just PR designed to support tax reductions, which in fact will leave us with continuing deficits.
This article says it's like confiscating used ammunition after it's shot when there's nothing left in it. It doesn't accomplish any policy objectives, says Charles Tiefer, a retired University of Baltimore law professor and expert on government contracting law. They're terminating so many contracts pointlessly, obviously doesn't accomplish anything for saving the money. Sandy, it's one thing to say that the government is bloated, and nobody disagrees with that. And, there's certainly areas that this should be addressed. But to take a meat cleaver or a chainsaw, like Elon Musk did the other day, and say this is the way we're going at it, and in the face of it, Sandy, in the face of people who call them out on it, if you said these things and somebody called you out on it, shouldn't you have to defend it?
Well, the fact is that people should exercise common sense, okay? And frequently the conservatives are talking about how that's what's being used right now is common sense. Well, common sense ought to tell you that with the complexity that the U.S. government has sending in a small team of people into a department and suggesting that in 1 week or 2 weeks they can wrap their arms around understanding what is going on in that department, what's important, what isn't important, what's waste, what isn't waste, what's fraud, what isn't fraud, is to beg credulity. And so, this is all just arm waving. And what we really need is a deliberate process for deciding what our policies ought to be, implementing our policies, and making sure they're implemented in a sound fashion. And by deliberate, I don't mean snail pace, but this is far different than snail pace. This is whirlwind. This is blitzkrieg.
Sandy, and as we, drill a little deeper, it almost appears to be no way to stop this right now. It's going to happen. 855-752-4842 is Tuesday. That means Tuesdays, my co-host Sandy Williams and you on the Earl Ingram Show.
The song Charles Manson stole from the Beatles. We're stealing it back.
When you get to the bottom, you go back to the top of the slide, and you stop and you turn and you go for a ride. Then you get to the bottom, then you see me again. Do you, don't you want me to love you? Come on now, fast and rock your boat. Tell me the answer. Ain't no law, but you ain't no dancer.
All right, welcome back to the Earl Ingram Show. As always, you can join us at 855-752-4842, 855-752-4842. Text us at that same number. It's Tuesday. That means Tuesday is my co-host, Sandy Williams. So Sandy, Elon Musk seems to have total latitude to do whatever he wants to do. It doesn't matter that he's sending out these signals that are just causing destruction and mayhem all over our government, and Donald Trump refuses to rein him in. You know, Sandy, he's all over the nation where people work in government, and you've talked about this many times. Even those in leadership don't know what to do or what to say. For heaven's sakes, the Veterans Administration not knowing what to tell the people if they should respond or not.
Well, in fact,
all over.
In fact, ultimately, the Office of Personnel Management, which is part of the White House, decided that they would come out with a memo and say, yeah, you don't have to answer that email. You aren't necessarily going to get fired if you don't answer it, which, of course, you know, the president yesterday said maybe you could get kind of fired. And so there's a lot of
Sandy.
I don't know, you know, I thought it was kind of a you're pregnant or you're not deal. I mean, either you're fired or you're not fired, but the fact is that he's sowing fear and confusion, and they're treating the federal government as if it doesn't matter, as if the federal workers are unimportant to the American people, as if this is just a cumbersome problem, all of these workers that work in the federal government and all the processes that the federal government pursues. And then it's like poking a hornet's nest, because the fact is that our federal government evolved, and it has, essentially everything it does is there for a purpose. And when that purpose gets disrupted, the people for whom that purpose is important will react. And so, we've got a position that's being pursued, which is to chop at the federal government so that we can reduce taxes as if taxes are at some inordinately high level, when the facts are that the taxes as a percentage of GDP are at about the lowest level they've been in the last 75 years. We don't have a burdensome tax process ongoing that needs to be treated in this fashion. If we had an orderly analysis of our government, that would give people comfort. But what's going on is not orderly. It's mayhem.
Sandy, even in the face of all of this mayhem, Donald Trump, even though those who support him, his approval ratings, let me see what it says here.
Well, his approval ratings dropped, down to 39. I mean, they are, as at least James Carville reported on a bunch of surveys that have been done and have demonstrated that his approval ratings are eroding rapidly. But my fear is that Donald Trump in this term, his only goal is to get his face on Mount Rushmore, and so it's all about legacy and fame.
You mean literally he wants to get his face on Mount Rushmore? Yeah,
literally. Oh, literally. I mean, he not only talks about it, but there's actually a bill in Congress proposing it. I mean, this is a real aim of his. And I think he has people around him who are describing to him the things he needs to do to make himself famous in history and to earn the legacy. You know, there's already a bill in Congress to make his birthday a federal holiday. You know, this is a person who's pursuing personal gain and personal fame at the expense of national interest. And that's what causes me to fear that he's letting himself become the tool of a whole bunch of people with a great deal of will who want to accomplish some things with our government that is only going to be good for the very wealthy, the very powerful, and for a bunch of corporate interests, and is not going to be good for the people.
Well, you know, Sandy, here's a prime example. Because many people may not be aware of this, but you know, Donald Trump and other minions wanted to go and check on the gold supply. So help me understand, or help us understand, why a president of the United States, with all the other things going on in this nation, Sandy, inflation is really starting to kick back up again. There's fear. Prices are going to be going through the roof. All of this, when they talked about Joe Biden and inflation, it was nonstop piling on with the Democrats. And now they clearly see inflation starting to heat back up again. Donald Trump is doing nothing, and the people with him, to address any of those things, Sandy. People are clamoring and saying they're having more. The food supply, I mean, what's costing them in the grocery store is worse, and yet they're going to check on the gold supply.
Well, let me say that I think this is willful and nefarious. I mean, it was Elon Musk that went with him. And here's the deal. Elon Musk has been agitating, and Donald Trump has even talked about setting up a Bitcoin type, a cryptocurrency reserve to be either replace or in addition to the gold reserves as the reserve backup to our currency. And doing that will make cryptocurrency far more valuable than it currently is. Okay. And I believe that this was done by Elon Musk and Donald Trump because they intend to do just that, to create a cryptocurrency reserve and to therefore make their own personal investments in cryptocurrency far more valuable than they currently are. I mean, the Trump family, within months prior to the election, set up a business venture that's premised on cryptocurrency, and Elon Musk is heavily invested in a cryptocurrency which, ironically, is called Doge. And so, you know, this is not just willy-nilly, and this is not something that's really in the public interest. I think this is something they were doing to combine public interest with private profit.
You know, Sandy, you watch these things that are happening before our eyes. We know you use the verbiage nefarious. You know, I got some, you know, I'm not as eloquent as you, but, you know, listen, man, what they're doing is criminal. If it's not criminal, it should be criminal. And so, how many Americans own cryptocurrency?
Yeah. Tom, Dick, and Mary are not worried in particular about cryptocurrency. And, you know, if it isn't criminal, it at least should be scandalous. Okay. And it apparently, at this point in our current world of non-reality, is none of the above.
All right, let's go to Dave from Mequon. Good morning to you, Dave. You say what?
Good morning, gentlemen.
You don't see any problem? You don't see any problem with them going and checking on the gold supply?
I think it's. I mean,
come on, man. Come on, man.
The deal is.
Come on.
But at the end of the day, the bigger issue is the inflation. And keep in mind, when people were going up in arms, it wasn't, you know, you guys were not that worried about it. It was like 9.5% for a little while. We had 40, I mean, if you look at the price of houses, they literally doubled in 4 years as far as building them and inflation and everything else. What's going to happen here is this. Now, first of all, the Department of Agriculture is revisiting the whole idea of where we eliminated, millions of chickens, 150 million chickens. Of course, that's going to affect egg prices. And so what they're going to do is they're going to actually.
Hey, Dave, egg prices are the
Let me-
least of the worries, Dave, when they're talking about inflation.
Look, Dave, first of all, you're telling us what's going to happen. That's people ought to be taking notes. But there is definitely everything that Donald Trump is talking about implementing, as in terms of policies, are inflationary. Okay, and to the extent that they are looking at trying to fight inflation, they're only trying to mitigate something which is altogether inevitable, and in particular with respect to his tariff policy. And if his tariff policy is just negotiation, and if it's not going to be a source of revenue that's paid by the American consumer, then it's also not going to be a source of revenue to the government. But it's clear that he does intend to implement these tariffs, and these tariffs will be singularly inflationary. Okay, there'll be a one-time kick that will cause a permanent level of increased prices.
Missed the boat. I think did you see what Tim Cook and Apple just announced the other day?
Well, yes, I did, and I don't think that Tim Cook and
stop cutting me off.
Hey, Dave.
$1 billion investment into the United States that would have been made in China. It's no longer going to be made there.
Well, actually, it was going to be made in Mexico. Okay, it wasn't going to be made in China. At least the press release.
Between Mexico. Okay, so between China and Mexico, what he is doing in Cleveland Cliffs, which is a steel operator, they are going to think about, okay, maybe we shouldn't do this. And yes, there might be definitely some short-term pain, but at the end of the day,
hey, Dave, I am going to cut you off. Dave, I am going to cut you off because to use the verbiage short-term pain to people who struggle every day in their lives is unacceptable.
Well, and let me just go into because Dave wants to talk about a world in which tariffs are erected to support the production within the United States. So let me just talk a little bit about what happens in a world where countries erect tariffs to protect the production within their territorial boundaries. And what will happen is that the United States, the level of international trade will be reduced substantially. And not only will imports to the United States be reduced, but exports from the United States will be reduced. Currently, the growth rate of almost every corporation that's experiencing material growth is the result of exports. And so we will end up with a world environment in which there is higher prices for everything. Those higher prices will be sustained. They won't be reduced over time. And there will be slower growth rates of GDP as the result. And the notion that in the long run will create more jobs within America actually defies a reality. And, there has been a long-term debate amongst economists about this. But the winning argument for the majority of economists is that stifling international trade for the purpose of trying to erect barriers to international trade to support local production in the long run is a losing proposition for everyone.
So, Dave, hang on a second. I'm getting a little frustrated with people who tell other people they need to experience a little pain. 855-752-4842. It's Tuesday. That means Tuesdays with Sandy Williams on the Earl Ingram Show.
When you get to the bottom, you go back to the top of the slide and you turn and you stop and you go for
I remember when I lost my mind. There was something so pleasant about that place. Even your emotions have an echo in so much space. And when you're out there without care, yeah, I was out of touch. But it wasn't because I didn't know enough. I just knew too much. Does that make me crazy?
All right, welcome back to the Earl Ingram Show. As always, you can join us at 855-752-4842, 855-752-4842. Text us at the same number, send you the music.
Well, it's about the craziness of what's going on. You know, it feels crazy.
Let me, Dave, I wanted to read a little bit about this from Farmers for Trump. This is yesterday's. President Donald Trump gets a lot of his political support from farm country, but those who put food on the table are worried that his policies, from tariffs to funding freezes, will make it harder for them to do their jobs. The prospect of a Trump-created trade war has farmers on edge, said the Washington Post. One Iowa farm family said the president's tariffs will drive up the cost of Chinese-made herbicides and tractors they use, and will likely cut off the markets for soybean to China and corn in Mexico that the state produces in abundance. Hawkeye State producers don't know where we're going to be at as far as our soybean and corn market, says Susan Chirillis, whose family grows both crops. It's a fresh element of worry as the nation's farmers deal with an unforgiving business environment, she said. The concerns go beyond tariffs. The rapid-fire array of directives from the Trump administration has paused federal funding on a range of programs and grants that benefit farmers, said the New York Times. The DOGE-driven funding freeze at the U.S. Agency for International Development left hundreds of millions of dollars worth of food and supplies sitting in ports, while other federal programs, including those that pay farmers for energy production and soil conservation, have also been halted. The nation's farmers don't need any more uncertainty. They already have enough. So Dave, you say they need to feel a little pain, that the farmers disagree with you.
Well, and let me just say, if you use common sense and look at what happens to the world that has barriers between the countries that are erected in the name of tariffs, what you end up having is a process in which in each country, you manufacture everything that's needed within that country to the extent possible to avoid tariffs. So the United States will no longer derive its profits and its growth from exports. It will derive its profits and growth only from the market inside the United States. And so much like Harley Davidson, if you're going to sell motorcycles in India, you build factories in India. And much like Elon Musk, if you're going to sell Teslas in India, you erect factories in India. And you do the same in China. And so you pursue growth in the international markets by building factories that are local to those international markets. And the factories you have in the United States are built here only to satisfy the United States economy. And so in the near term, there might be a growth in factories so they can meet the demands within the United States. But the United States economy is stagnant. It is not a rapidly growing economy. It is not an economy that's going to support rapid corporate growth. And the rapid corporate growth that's occurred in corporations across America over the last 40 years has been the result of international sales. And so common sense should tell people that tariffs will only be a near-term kind of an effect, and in the long term, it will make everything more expensive, and jobs will follow the product's source of demand, which is the country in which it's sold. And so, you don't really end up getting very far with this process.
Well, Sandy, I don't believe you plant a seed and that plant grows anyway. It takes years. And I think the flippant response that people have about people need to feel some pain is what's at the root of. Dave, your response.
I look at the city of Milwaukee. You worked at A.L. Smith for all those years. There's no industrial production within the city limits of Milwaukee. Bass Rock just closed up the doors recently, and the city is suffering. And so the policies that Sandy's talking about has not worked out for the average American. As a matter of fact, we're called the Rust Belt for a reason. And the reason being because all the ideas that Sandy and other people have had has hurt the average American. And what I mean by that is that if you look at the entire Midwest, Detroit, Cleveland, St. Louis, they're all very different than what they were 40, 50 years ago, where you could make a very good living working at a factory. And I disagree with Sandy because we have the opportunity now with artificial intelligence, with AI, there could be huge advantages. Production, it's going to be a game changer as far as
automated, whatever it is, Dave, is going to be automated. It's never going to create anywhere near the amount of jobs, even if you believe that it's going to be automated.
Yeah. Look,
okay?
And the effect that hit Milwaukee, the first effect and the Rust Belt was that definition of Rust Belt came up not when jobs were moving out of the Midwest to China or to India. It came up when the jobs were moving to Mississippi and Louisiana.
Right.
And so,
non-union shops.
It was a shift from union to non-union jobs. And, I just think that in the long term, the realities of the world have a significant probability of occurring, and you can only stop the freight train for a limited period of time.
855-752-4842. Guys, hang on. It's Tuesday. That means Tuesday with my co-host Sandy Williams and you.
I wanna be like them. Ever since I was little, it looked like fun. There's no coincidence I've come, and I can die when I'm done. But maybe I'm crazy. Maybe you're crazy. Maybe we're crazy. Probably.
The lunatic is on the grass. The lunatic is on the grass. Remembering games and daisy chains and laughs. Got to keep the loonies on the path. The lunatic is in the hall.
Is he saying the lunatic?
Yeah, the lunatic.
All right, 855-752-4842. You can text us at that same number. It's Tuesday. That means Tuesday is my co-host, Sandy Williams, and you, Sandy, the music.
Well, it's just Pink Floyd just talking about lunacy and what it feels like maybe to live in a place where that might be prevalent.
Well, we're dealing with that right now. You know, David is look, Mexico and Canada tariffs to begin next week. Trump announces these 25% tariffs, Andy. I mentioned something about inflation and that people are now starting to worry about inflation. Dave responded right away with, Joe Biden and the Democrats had all the inflation, and Sandy, they had brought inflation back down to a reasonable number. And as a matter of fact, the last time, as I recall, the Federal Reserve accepted that and believed that inflation had been curbed and started bringing down the interest rates. Maybe I didn't see that, Sandy. Maybe I was asleep. But they saw it and things started heading in the right direction.
Well,
It's not
yeah,
acceptable to now turn around and rev it back up. How is that okay?
The world experienced the problems of the pandemic, the supply chain disruptions, the shortages, the pent-up demand during the period of the pandemic. And so the world experienced inflation, and the United States did a better job than the rest of the world of curbing that inflation. But the inflation that we're now going to experience is going to be a self-inflicted wound. And if you talk about eggs being expensive, wait till you see how expensive avocados get. I mean, people don't eat as many avocados as they do eggs, but it's an example. And furthermore, the American farmers who produce soy and who produce corn, who are used to exporting it to places like Mexico and places like China, are going to find out that the same thing they found out 5 years ago, which is that they're going to be hurting badly. And the fact is that there's a lot of pain that's experienced as a result of tariffs. And most economists who look at and prognosticate about what the result of these tariffs will be are that the pain is going to far exceed the benefits.
Well, and this is unnecessary, right?
Well, I said, it's self-inflicted. It's a policy made by someone who thinks tariff is the most beautiful word in the English language, and he thinks that bigly. The fact is that we're experimenting with our economy. We're jumping into a whole bunch of things without any sort of real deliberation associated with it, without any real public input. We've got someone asserting that they have a mandate to do whatever comes into their head, not the things that were talked about during the election. And it's a sorry thing to experience because, we're going to break what wasn't broken.
Well, Sandy, these 25% tariffs that are going to go into effect, I mean, it's going to happen. I don't think people thought it was going to happen because he suspended it for 30 days. They thought common sense would come into play, but it clearly did not.
Well, I'll see what happens in the long run. I'll see. I mean, there's going to be a lot of screaming. The squeal that will come from those who are being hurt by these tariffs will be loud and audible, and we'll see whether there's a response to it that mitigates the extent to which these tariffs are implemented. But if it doesn't, then the pain is going to be significant. And the fact is that the prospect of having the tariffs has already introduced inflation, because inflation is a psychology. If people believe that prices are going up, they will behave that way. And people currently today believe that prices will be going up. And one of the main reasons for that are all these declarations of the implementation of tariffs.
All right, let's go to CJ. CJ, you're up.
Well, thanks for taking my call, Earl and Sandy. As you guys, I guess, fact check Republicans when they call in, you talk over us, you turn off our mics, and we're used to that. But you couldn't dispute, Dave, that now all of a sudden you and your party care about inflation.
That's a ridiculous statement.
22% over 4 years. Now you care. Well, the mere fact is, this president, we've seen what he's done to the border. We see what he's doing around the world for security.
Well, what is he doing?
Wars,
what is he doing around the world? Hey, what is he doing around the world for security, CJ? No, don't laugh. What is he doing?
With Macron yesterday? Did you see him with Macron yesterday?
I saw him with Macron. So what is he doing for security around the world?
There you go.
No, what is that? What did he do?
Well, can I finish my answer?
Yeah, go ahead. Finish the answer.
He's brought countries. He now has the EU. He now has France. He now has Europe and NATO paying their fair share and taking care of their own security. He didn't want out of NATO. He wanted to solve the wars. He wants peace. And what did Biden do? He caused this war.
Well, see, CJ, the reason I cut you off is you talk nonsensically. You what you're talking about is it doesn't make any sense. Let's go to Vincent. Good morning to you, Vincent. Thank you very much for the call. You say what?
Good morning, Earl. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. The fact is, he's made the world more dangerous with the issues that he's dealing with, especially that vote that the United States took in the UN, especially with Russia and North Korea, basically trying to support a lie that Ukraine somehow started this war with Russia. The fact is, he's making the world more dangerous when he's trying to perform this isolation bit that he's trying to perform. The fact is, Macron yesterday basically wiped the floor with him because he tried to tell a lie about how Europe was is loaning Ukraine money, and Macron said, "No, we're not. This is not a loan. This is something we're supporting Ukraine fully." So no, Macron did not. The fact is, he is not making this world more safe. The fact is that we're going down this fascist road when we decide to side with individuals who are despots in this world, as far as in Russia and in North Korea. I don't understand where we're going. So I don't see where this caller says somehow that Donald Trump is making this world more safer.
Well, clearly he's watching Fox News. And so they watch Fox News and they think it's the gospel, and they come and they tout it on these airways. And when you push back on them and you ask them to explain what they're saying, they can't explain it because they've got nothing to back it up. Sandy?
Well, it's interesting. The form of peace that Donald Trump is pursuing is the imperial, the process of dividing the world up into several empires. The American Empire being one of them, the Russian Empire being another, the Chinese Empire being a third, and the European Empire being the fourth. And it appears that he prefers dealing with autocrats because you can sit down at a table with somebody who rules their country with an iron fist and cut deals. He wants to be that guy for America, and he's got that guy in Russia, it's Putin, and he's got that guy in China, Xi, and he's got that guy in North Korea. And so, And for that matter, Netanyahu has behaved a great deal like that in Israel, a long-term leader, long-term strong man leader. And if that's peace in the world, if that's what we as America think is the proper form of peace in the world, we could have had that peace in 1941 as well. And I just think it's concerning that America is shifting its gears in the direction of believing in the imperial America. And we don't seem to be restive about the notion of taking over Greenland and taking over the Panama Canal and belittling and talking about taking over Canada. This is all a process that is not in the long run going to lead to world peace. The empires will clash with one another at some point, and instead of having territorial wars in smaller parts of the world, we'll have major ones.
All right, let's go to Brendan. Good morning to you, Brendan. Thank you for the call. You say what?
Yeah, yeah, CJ. Thanks for the bunch of BS you just put out over the air. 22% was what inflation was before when Biden went into office. It was at 3% when he left. But be that as it may, I'm a little more worried about the undertow. What's going on is we're looking at Trump on his orange face on TV every day about the FCC going back and reopening cases, and Trump, while we're all talking about all this stuff that he puts out on the air every day, and his little conferences are behind his desk, the FCC is trying to build state TV. Joy Reid loses her job at MSNBC. Why? Gee, I don't know. Maybe because she's black. How long will Rachel Maddow have before she loses her job because she talks against Trump? Okay, we are losing the freedom of speech while we're talking and looking at dollar signs. So everybody needs to wake up onto that too, because that's happening. It's happening, and there's other stuff happening. And the other thing I don't hear any of these MAGA morons talking about when they call is Elon. Guess why? Because they know what he's doing is messed up. And everybody knows somebody that's been affected by this. And that's it.
Hey, Brendan, thank you very much for the call. 855-752-4842. It's Tuesday. That means Tuesday's my call. Sandy Williams, guys, will come to you.
Till I'm sane. You lock the door, throw away the key. There's someone in my head, but it's not me. And if the cloud bursts, it's thunder in your ear. You shout, no one seems to hear. And if the band you're in starts playing different tunes, I'll see you on the dark side of the moon.
All right, welcome back to the Earl Ingram Show. As always, you can join us at 855-752-4842. Text us at that same number. It's Tuesday. That means Tuesdays is my co-host, Sandy Williams. And Sandy, before we go back to the phone lines, what's frightening to me is that in the face of all of these things that we see happening with Donald Trump and Elon Musk and Republicans, even with the budget and all those things, you see these things happening, and yet there are still people who still support that. There are Americans who still think that this is a good thing, that there's nothing unusual about this, Sandy, and it needs to just go forth and just let it, run its course. But what gets me about it is it's almost as if they can't even envision running its course destroys the world, Sandy. It doesn't just destroy this nation. What these people are doing is destroying the world.
Well, we're certainly setting the world up to be far different than it currently is. We're turning our back on civil liberties and deciding that strong-arm government, autocratic, super right-wing governments are the thing. We're trying to export it to Europe. We have our Vice President J.D. Vance taking a position essentially in the German election. We've got people who are looking at this as a worldwide ideological movement, and the movement isn't one that's designed to support civil liberties. It talks about civil liberties, but it talks about them, and then on one side of the mouth and the other side of the mouth, it talks about repression. And here we have the beginning of repression, serious repression here in the United States. We have a U.S. attorney in the District of Columbia who's talking about prosecuting people in the media for essentially being critical of the incumbent government. We have the clear politicization of the FBI with the appointments that have been made to both the head of the FBI and the deputy. These are political operatives. These aren't professional police. And then we have the notion of politicizing the U.S. attorney's offices around the country. We just had today the dropping of a claim of a prosecution, a federal prosecution against a congressman in D.C. Or at least a federal prosecution because it's a District of Columbia, which appears to have been called off by the U.S. Justice Department as part of this political process. So, this stuff is, as I think Brendan was right, the real danger that I see in the long run is the change of process in the United States, the loss of our due processes, and the loss of our separation of government, and the personalization of power in the hands of the president to the point where he becomes not a president but a don, much in the nature of the Godfather.
Let's go to Mike from Kenosha. Good morning to you, Mike. Thank you for the call. You say what?
Thanks, guys. And to echo your comment a moment ago, this is totally unnecessary. This is all manufactured conflict. We should all be doing regular American activity instead of, basically being held hostage by a group of thugs and criminals. There's no doubt that we have lots of work to do, but keep in mind that in recent history, we've had no action or very limited action by Congress, both at the federal level and at the state level. We already know about Wisconsin's gavel in, gavel out 10-second sessions that dominated during the Biden administration. That's the solution. But for some reason, like you had mentioned a moment ago, these guys, the GOP, don't believe in co-equal branches of government. We have a game plan how to resolve our problems. We just have to use it. But when they don't want to fix it, when they want, again, to manufacture conflict, holy smokes, that's what happens. The transfer of wealth has been significant. $50 trillion since 1980. $50 trillion went from the lower and middle classes to the very top. But yet that's not enough. They're still talking about more. So how in the world anybody could feel comfortable giving these bandits all the power in basically trusting them with America in our future? You've lost your mind. I mean, show me what they've done to earn our profound respect and admiration and trust. I haven't seen it. Finally, this GOP machine of influencers, they're the ones that call job creators and trickle down. They're the ones that put that on the mantle for all of us to revere and salute, when it's been a complete and utter failure. And it's about time that we pick this pay-to-play system and stick it right back where it belongs, and where the sun don't shine.
Hey, Mike.
It's not doing us any
Hey,
wrong.
Mike.
Yep.
Thank you very much for the call, as always. 855-752-4842. It's Tuesday. That means Tuesdays with Sandy Williams. And, guys, we'll come right back to you.
People are strange when you're...
All right, whenever you're ready.
Tomorrow, we're thrilled to welcome. Let me go back. Ready? Tomorrow, we're thrilled to welcome the Get the Lead Out Coalition back, along with Dr. Craig, who will be discussing the state budget on the Earl Ingram Show. Welcome back to the Earl Ingram Show. As always, you can join us at 855-752-4842. 855-752-4842. Text us at that same number. You know, part of what frustrates me about all of this is this cold, callous way of looking at other human beings and their pain and their suffering. And the fact that, you know, we don't have compassion. Those people who are supporting this don't have any compassion whatsoever. Sandy, you know, it could be people anywhere in the world, but how can you not have any compassion for your fellow countrymen? You know they're struggling. You know that this is very difficult time, and yet the wealthiest amongst us continuing to get greedier and greedier. Whether or not they get the tax cut or not, Sandy, it's not going to change the conditions of the wealthiest amongst us, right? Whatever that tax cut is.
Well, no, and the only hope that's being held out is the one that I think Dave from Equine wanted to talk about, which is the notion that jobs will get created through the tariffs by causing manufacturing to return to the United States. And, that's a kind of a wait and see proposition. The fact was that Biden had this policy adopted to support the chip manufacturing process and to create factories and jobs in the United States, which the Republicans attacked as a bad idea. So, and that was actually taking hold. Those jobs in a vital industry were actually coming to fruition. The problem is that tariffs overall are going to create more pain than they are gain, and the pain is going to be in the name of profits for those who are manufacturers more so than it's going to be jobs. And that's pretty much the prognosis given by the vast majority of economists who look at this and can predict the outcome. And the outcome is not good for Tom, Dick, and Mary.
All right, let's go to Tom from LA. Good morning to you, Tom. You say what? Tom. All right, let's go to Susan from Kenosha.
1 second, Earl.
Okay.
All right, we got Tom coming back up. Here we go.
All right, Tom. Go ahead. Tom, you're up. All right, let's go to Susan from Kenosha.
Susan, you're on.
Are we having trouble with the phone lines? Let's go to Ann. Ann, are you there? Okay. Looks like we're having... Oh, go ahead, Ann.
Okay, I want to say I need to comment to CJ. If he doesn't think Democrats don't care about inflation, we do. But I'm not supporting a felon and a liar and say prices will go down on day one. Why doesn't CJ talk about the economy? That's the biggest reason people voted for Trump. All he does is bring up what Biden didn't do. Well, he's in for a rude awakening. I feel sorry for his daughters. He's protecting a Hitler. Get off of Fox Entertainment, I say. They want to control all our media. And how is that Democratic, Republicans? Once CJ's Social Security and Medicare is affected, then maybe he'll wake up. And that's my message for today.
Hey, Ann, thank you very much for the call. I would say that CJ is just one person. And there are many other people who think just like him. People ask me why I have him on. And I have him on because there are a lot of people who think just like him, Sandy. He's not alone. And so, we can act as if he's, an individual player, but he's not.
No, absolutely not. And there's many people who have decided to buy into the Donald Trump notion that this guy should be given complete latitude, regardless of what he talks about. Like I said last show, there were people who said, like in the last presidential term of Donald Trump, don't take him literally, but take him seriously. And I think that's what most of his supporters have decided, that they don't take him literally, but they think they take him very seriously, and they think that he can do no wrong. And the fact is that I think John Bolton was right yesterday when he said basically that he's got mush for brains. It's all mush. It's not careful thought processes. It's knee-jerk reactions. And I don't think the people of this country really want us to be ruled by an imperial person whose general modus operandi is knee-jerk reactions.
Sandy, John Bolton said he had mush for brains. The most powerful man in the world has mush for brains. How does that leave the rest of us?
Well, that's the scary thing, is that we've got someone who has actual impulse control problems. We've got someone who doesn't understand facts at all, sitting next to Macron and spouting out numbers that had nothing to do with reality. The notion that the United States has committed over $300 billion to Ukraine and that Europe is much less than half of that number, when the fact is that we've committed less than half of 300 billion, and Europe has committed 265 billion. And so, and then he said turned to Macron and said, "And Europe is going to get its money back." Really? There's no means for that. And meanwhile, Trump is trying to exact $500 billion from Ukraine and Zelensky. Why? Because they're in a position of weakness, and I guess the new U.S. policy is that you pick at the bones of the roadkill.
All right, let's go to Don from Milwaukee. Good morning to you, Don. You say what?
Hey, good morning, gentlemen. You know that old saying about a leopard never really changes his spots, where Elon Musk is giving Nazi salutes? Well, I read a while back that, originally the Musks were in Canada when he was a little boy. I guess one of his parents belonged to the Canadian Nazi Party. I don't know if it was the mother or father, and then they moved to South Africa because I guess they were harassed a lot. Canadians really weren't too happy about Nazis living among them. But anyhow, I just wanted to pass that along.
Hey, Don, thank you very much for the call.
You betcha.
Yeah, that's not quite actually how it played out. But the Donald Trump, Elon Musk is a Canadian citizen because his mother is Canadian, and so he was able to get Canadian citizenship in that fashion. He was born in South Africa. Yeah, I'm not a fan of Elon Musk, but I think we ought to stick to as factual a basis as possible with respect to him.
All right, let's go to Larry. Larry, you're up next.
This is Jean from Eau Claire.
Go ahead, Jean.
Okay, yeah. Hey, this is like watching a really, really bad movie. And the people in it just really and truly don't care about anybody but themselves. And we've never been that way in our country. This is our government. And I personally am getting sick to my stomach every time I see those people on Elon Musk, Mr. Fancy Pants, dancing around, using this chainsaw as he cuts very important services to the people in our country. They're playing willy-nilly with our neighbors like they don't count, and it makes me sick to my stomach. This is not my country, and these people should be run out of office because they are criminals and they are hateful, and they enjoy watching people suffer. There are people with personality disorders who get a little thrill out of hurting people, and these people every day are dancing around and really getting excited as they put people down. They run them down, they hurt them, and it's disgraceful, and it's evil, and it's hurting our country. So those of you who are these great Christians better get to church and start evaluating on how we treat people and how godly we really are, because this is just so awful. So anyway,
hey, Jean, thank you very much for the call. Let's go to Susan. You're up next, Susan.
Hi. I obviously, I lived in Milwaukee all my life. My dad actually worked for Nash, if you remember what that was, car company. And you were right. What happened was the manufacturers did not want to deal with the unions, so they pulled all those jobs and they sent them down south. When the South got to the point that they were making a fairly good wage, they sent them overseas. So that's how we lost our manufacturing in this country. And myself, as I'm looking at this, and I'm looking at Elon Musk and Trump, it always brings me back to Animal Farm in 1984. If people would read those books, they would actually see what's happening to the United States. And I think it's about time that we get our head out of the sand and we do something before it's too late.
Hey Susan,
That's
thank you.
all I have to say.
Thank you very much for the call. I agree with you, but I think it is too late already. Let's go to Cindy. Good morning to you, Cindy. You say what?
Well, I'm just going to ask CJ. He keeps talking about how the convicted felon, convicted rapist is the greatest thing since sliced bread. I'm just wondering who he's trying to convince, me or himself.
Well, thank you very much for the call. You know, let's go. Let's go to John from Milwaukee. Good morning to you, John. You say what?
Good morning. Good morning, sir. I have two quick points, but the first one is that I have an idea that I've written to our state people, not state, national people. I can't get any traction. I just want to put it out to people, see if they think it's good. We had 75 million people vote for Kamala Harris in the last election. If each of us got together and contributed $100 towards Ukraine, that's $7.5 billion. And that does not count the Republicans that want to defend Ukraine. Our current office holder is for Russia. And we could have, we the people, supporting Ukraine. I don't have the wherewithal, and nor should an individual have it, to set up anything for that kind of structure, that kind of money. But if we bubbled that up and people started moving on that, we're saying that we in America do not stand for our current office holder siding with Russia. We side with the Ukraine.
Hey, John, thank you very much for the call. You know, Sandy, what I would say to John is I certainly feel pain for Ukraine, but there's some stuff getting ready to happen inside of our nation. We got some stuff to deal with inside of our own nation, Sandy, that I think we got to take care of first.
Well, we certainly have to pay attention. And like I've said on earlier shows, I'm most concerned about the notion of the architecture of our democracy, the logistical parts of it, the three pillars of our government, the Supreme Court actually operating in a lawful manner to protect our democracy. And that's who we're going to be relying on next, because our executive has announced their intention to leap beyond the boundaries that have currently existed on executive power. And what we have left to defend our system is the U.S. Supreme Court.
All right, 855-752-4842. You're tuned into the Earl Ingram Show, guys. We'll come right back to you.
not America. Sha-la-la-la-la. Little piece of you, a little piece in me. Will die. This is not a miracle. For this is not America. Blossom fails to bloom the season.
All right, welcome back to what is the last few minutes of the Earl Ingram Show. As always, you can join us at 855-752-4842, 855-752-4842. Go right back to the phone lines. Tom from LA. Tom, go ahead.
Earl, so basically, just wanted to say that if anybody can write a letter or an email or text to the Ukrainian embassy and tell them that we stand behind them, that would be a big help. I know John had a great idea about the $100, but honestly, Ukraine just needed our weapons, which we're the number one weapons manufacturer in the world. And so really and truly, even though we gave money or gave them weapons, it was our weapons. So it really did not cost us in terms of actual money. So what we need to do is support the Ukrainians and say that, we are not, Felon 47 does not speak for us, is what we need to say. My second point is that, you ever notice Trump tries to make things very simple for people who don't have to think very hard? This whole thing with Vladimir Zelensky only having 4%, the whole idea of NATO being almost like a club, like Mar-a-Lago, where you pay dues to be in it. He tries to go for the very, very simple thing. Rather, it's a lot more complex than that. And when you have people like CJ calling up and saying this stuff, it's like, first off, CJ, you would never be invited to Mar-a-Lago. But second, that's where you pay dues. You don't pay dues into NATO, just to let you know. And no, the Europeans have not paid a lot less money than the United States has. So we need to stop those crazy lies, and we need a media that pushes back on Trump when he says this crazy stuff, so we can actually get the truth out there. That's what they need to start doing with him, is holding his feet to the fire. And I hope that we have a media that can do that.
Hey, Tom, thank you very much for the call. All right, let's go to Bill. Bill, you're up next.
Let me just interject one thing that's an interesting fact, and that is that now Trump and Vance and others are demanding that the NATO nations each spend 5% of their GDP on defense, whereas the prior agreement had been 2%, acting as if the United States spends something like that. The fact is, the current percentage of GDP that the United States spends is 3.8%. And so once again, we're just in a world of made up statistics, but we do it on an official basis, which is pretty frightening.
All right, Bill, you're up next.
Good morning, Earl and Cindy.
Good morning.
Say, keep CJ on, and don't get upset with CJ for this reason. His mind can be swayed real simply, and we see it has.
Swayed in what? Oh, okay. Go ahead.
His mind has been swayed. He's one of the 77 million that can have their mind swayed whichever way the wind blows, as long as Trump is in there. They'll believe anything if he said it. But feel sorry for him that they're that much of a sheep that they just follow this shining star of whatever they think he is. A couple other things to remember, CJ. If you value the Constitution, if you value American justice, stand up for it now, or forever you'll be lost. Thanks.
Hey, thank you very much for the call. This feeling sorry for people who are supporting a man who's destroying our nation. I can't feel sorry for people who are choosing to go along with a man who openly, Sandy, as you stated, doesn't care at all about the Constitution or this nation?
Well, I think someone who's trying to seize control of every lever of power, the U.S. Attorney's offices, the FBI, the Department of Justice, all of the agencies, and seizing power in the manner of Don Corleone. You know, he's seizing power and then using it just in the same manner that the mafia would use its power. It's a protection racket. Either see it my way, or we'll bring the powers of government down upon you. And that is the furthest thing from what our founding fathers had in mind for the United States. That is a return not just to monarchy, but to a malicious form of autocracy.
You know, Sandy, the fear is it's already too far gone to stop it.
Well, it isn't too far gone yet, but it's definitely on the move towards being there. You know, having the FBI now set up the way it is to be a politically operated police department, having the U.S. Attorney's offices operating in what is clear and openly a political processes, having the president bring down the power of the presidency against anyone who speaks up against him, and play whack-a-mole in a totally vindictive kind of a way that's based on personal partisan politics, is a long way towards exactly what you described.
All right, Sandy, thank you very much as always. I'll see you again on Friday. Thank everybody who made the show go. Thank you, Carti. Up next, Jane Madden, Greg Bach Madden on there. Enjoy the weather.
This is not America. No, this is not. Scum and melting from the inside. Falcon spirals to the ground. So coffee bread tomorrow's clouds. A little piece of you, a little piece in me will die.